I am very happy to bring into this conversation, again, another historic day here, and I get to talk to Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz. Professor, wow, big news here. Justice Kennedy is resigning. Your reaction, sir?
Well, I'm not surprised. He had wanted to resign last year. He's going to be 83 years old. He has served for a long time. His appointment was historic. He replaced Robert Bork. That actual act was the beginning of the politicization of the Supreme Court in a dramatic way. The refusal to allow Justice Bork to serve on the Supreme Court and how politicized it became. Kennedy then went on the court and was far, far less partisan. He was a kind of centrist who leaned to the right, mostly voted with the conservative bloc, but often voted with the liberal bloc to form a majority. He'll now be replaced by somebody who is very conservative and will give a much stronger bent to the conservative side. And it continues the politicization of the court. The Supreme Court, I think, is becoming a less respected institution because it splits along party lines so often. And with Kennedy leaving, it will split along party lines even more often.
You worry about that?
I mean, I'm worried about
because, you know, look, if you have a strict interpretation of the Constitution from a very conservative perspective and believe sort of fundamentally in that document, are you as prone to the political bias in your view?
I do. I think so. I think Bush versus Gore was a completely political decision. The 5 justices who stopped the election changed what they had previously decided. I wrote a book about it called Supreme Injustice, documenting those changes. The Union case today, that could have gone either way in terms of a strict construction of the Constitution. There's a constitutional right under the First Amendment, but also there's a constitutional right of union members to have support of people for whom they collectively bargain. You know, these are complicated cases, and the justices ought to be appointed based on their merit, their ability to understand the Constitution and to interpret it, not whether they can be counted on to come out one way or another way on working rights.
Yeah, no, I agree, and you're right on his legacy. Let me just ask a crazy question there, Professor Dershowitz. Would you consider it?
I'm too old. You know, if you had asked me the question 25 years ago, you might get an interesting answer, but I'm going to be 80 years old this September, and I'm looking forward.
I'm not an ageist, but no.
Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, I don't want to work that hard. Let me just do this TV thing
but I would say that you need justices who, like me, are willing to say, look, I oppose the travel ban as a matter of policy, but I think it's constitutional as a matter of strict interpretation of the Constitution. I think you need more justices who are willing to put aside their own partisan political views and interpret the Constitution in ways that are consistent with the proper interpretation.
And Professor, you brought up age, so I'll go there as well. I mean, one of the strengths of Neil Gorsuch, many said, was the fact that he was younger and he would be there a long time, and he brings a kind of youth to the court that some believe is very needed right now. Do you agree with that?
Look, he is who he is. He's way to the right of Justice Scalia. Justice Scalia was conservative on many issues, but very liberal on First Amendment issues and on issues of the rights of criminal defendants. And Gorsuch seems to be very much to the right on both of those issues. So, you know, every justice is different, and we'll wait and see what his legacy develops over the years.
How is this going to change? If, in fact, the president puts someone in who is different than Kennedy and that he or she is not the swing vote, but rather more predictably conservative, how does that affect, like, what are the biggest sort of things that we could possibly see happen over the next 10 years?
A true conservative also believes in stare decisis, that is, in precedent, and not changing the rules that have been in existence. And if you get a conservative who believes in stare decisis, then you won't get tremendous overruling of previous decisions. But if you get a justice who's prepared to simply impose his own views on the Constitution, it'll come out differently.
Well, the president is going to be addressing Kennedy's retirement momentarily, and we will be going to him just as soon as he does. Do you think there are some people maybe on his short list, not including you, but others? That, where should we look? To the same list that Neil Gorsuch came from?
Yeah. I think so. The Federalist Society list, these are usually very highly qualified people with strong conservative bents. But I'm hoping they are also people who believe in stare decisis. So you'll get justices who say, If I were there when Roe versus Wade was decided, I would have voted the other way, but it's been on the books for so many years that we can't overrule it.
What is your advice to the president right now? And partisanship aside.
Pick a highly qualified person, not based on any agendas, but pick somebody who will go down in history as one of the great justices.
Mm-hmm. Would that make President Trump a great president? I mean, having...
It would help. It would contribute to his legacy considerably.
Mm-hmm. Do you anticipate others, shall I just ask? So, I mean, he'll have had the opportunity for two.
Yeah, with this, we may see some of the older justices saying, look, we've given up, we're not going to win, so we might as well retire. So it wouldn't surprise me if Justice Ginsburg retired after this appointment. But she'd wait to see. She'd wait to see who was appointed.
But see, let me just jump in and ask you, why would she do that, though? Because in some ways, I would think she would feel as though it's more important for her to be there on the bench.
Because she doesn't want to spend the rest of her life dissenting. If she could make a difference, she would stay. But if she can't make a difference, she might very well leave.